Hey, welcome back. We're still live at Michigan Pagan Fest Day 3. We
That's right.
promised you for the last 2 days we'd have Nathan King on,
That's
and
right.
Nathan's here.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, you guys.
Oh, we're
Yeah.
happy to have you
Yeah,
here with us.
definitely.
Awesome stuff.
Very cool.
Tell us a little bit about yourself so that people can know who you are.
Yeah. So my name is Nathan. So I was born and raised in the Michigan area, learned my craft right downtown Ypsilanti. And now I live in Salem, Massachusetts, and I work in the witchcraft industry professionally. So I do tours about modern witchcraft. I'm a psychic reader. I also help manage one of the shops as an assistant. So yeah, I do a lot down in that realm of things.
Oh, that's very cool.
So you were telling me earlier, like, how long did you have to get training and studying and that kind of stuff to be able to be a tour guide in Salem?
Right. Well, the tour guide, in order to become a tour guide in Salem, you have to pass this test that's given out by the city of Salem. And, that test changes year to year, but it's overall all the history of Salem. So you have to know it. And a lot of it is, handwritten. A lot of it is not multiple choice. You just kind of have to know your stuff. And so I really, really wanted to prepare for this to make sure I knew what I was doing. So I started studying about the witch trials in depth my senior year of high school. And then that following year, I was able to pass the test and do that.
What drew you to want to do this, to want
Right.
to become a guide and move to Salem and do
Yeah.
this professionally?
Well, I think that really goes back to why Salem in itself is so important to witches today, and to contemporary witchcraft, because as us as Americans, this is the first seeds of witchcraft being talked about and presented of what's happening in the colonies during 1692. This is the first time we have a hysteria around the word witch and the folklore and the meaning, and how even at this time we have to keep in mind Christianity is still a relatively new religion, and so these Puritans are hanging on to these ancient folk beliefs whether they know that they still have them or not.
Right.
And this is something that we carry through our very DNA. So these people are absolutely tapping into the grassroots, and then we have Tituba come in, and she's absolutely practicing something she learned from her homeland, and it sets, she's the catalyst for this entire thing. And that's kind of what starts America's fascination, our inclination towards magic, and the beauty of magic, and even the macabre side of magic. So I really think it's about paying honor, paying tribute, because that's part of our history, but also this is the Mecca. This is where, because of people like Lori Cabot, the official witch of Salem, she was able to open the gates for people to come here feeling safe to practice. And we have everybody is representing a different tradition. We have a myriad of traditions to explore, to discover, to discuss, and to create commerce with each other. And that's a really rare privilege in this day and age, to have such a concentrated area of magic that is then defying what the Puritans were trying to do with it in itself.
Right.
Think about the irony of what's happening.
That is amazing, actually.
And that's exactly, for me, what the witch is all about. It's creating something out of nothing. It's taking paradox and turning it on its head, and creation and the showing of the paradox. As we are a paradox, we walk between the worlds.
Right.
We are somewhere and we are nowhere, and yet somewhere in between at the same time.
Exactly.
And that's amazing space to work in. That's chaotic space to work in. But that is where the witch lives. That is where the witch breathes. And Salem offers all of that.
That is so cool. Now, I did want to ask, the other day, there was a ritual of elevation of Tituba.
Yes.
And could you tell us a little bit more about Tituba, about her? Because I think
Absolutely.
she tends to get overlooked. Like, maybe a month or two ago, I listened to some podcasts and I read a book about the Salem witch trials. I was really interested. And she was barely touched on.
This is the thing. And I think part of it is because Tituba's character in general, who she was, is so shrouded in mystery. And so there's not a whole lot we know about her. But going off of just looking at the witch trials as a whole, that's the fascinating thing about being a Salem historian, is we're always finding out more about the witch trials, because this is only 9 months of history we're talking about at most. So how much was recorded back then? But Tituba in herself, here we have somebody who is named Tituba. That is her name. It's not the Christianized, colonized name. She's kept her heritage. And that's breaking the standard mold of the time in itself. And then here we have somebody who's openly giving this, carrying on the tradition of storytelling to these Puritan girls. There's an aspect, I think, that frightens people about her, because she definitely knew what she was doing. She was definitely practicing some sort of magic, and she's the catalyst for everything. And the truth is, we really don't know why. Why is, I think it's all programmed that way. It was totally meant to be that way. But here we have the catalyst, and no one really knows the reason why.
Yeah, we can't really know what her motivation
Right.
was. Like if she was trying to get the girls in trouble. I've heard that theory put in there.
Yep.
But I've also heard that, she maybe had an affection for the girl that was in the home that she served.
Absolutely.
And was trying to do something for her, to entertain
Absolutely.
her, to teach her. I mean, what do you
Yeah.
personally think?
I personally think that Tituba was a lot smarter than people give her credit for. I think she knew exactly what she was doing because if you read the folklore of what she was telling the girls, she had this vision. She had this vision of something other because she hung on to her heritage.
Mm-hmm.
And going off of that, I think she was really smart, and I think she was saying what she was saying because she knew that that's all they were going to accept.
Gotcha.
That's all they were going to accept to hear. So if she can please or appease rather the oppressor, she has a chance.
Right.
And guess what? She gets out.
Yeah,
Right,
she's
yeah.
the only one.
She doesn't.
Really?
She survives.
Yeah,
she gets
she survived
released,
that mess.
and out of 19 hanged, 1 pressed, plus the myriad of people who died in the jail.
Right.
In fact, this is some of the thing that we're talking about Salem now is, yes, we have the 20 victims, but also think about the people like Dorcas Good, 4 years old and accused of witchcraft and put in prison. And she dies when she's 14 years old because of what was inflicted on her in the jail. This affected a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Part of why I think the witch trials stopped at the time that they did was because look at what the city was like. You're killing off your population.
Right.
And it was also starting to spread to other populations
Yes.
as well. It
Yes.
wasn't just Salem Village. It was the nearby.
And even a few years later after the Salem witch trials, there's stories of one woman being accused in Connecticut.
Right.
And they call this the witch trials that America's forgot. It's fascinating stuff. But it all shows you that linking of the psychology of Puritan thought. And Puritan thought is super fascinating. And this is why, for me personally, looking at it as a historian perspective and looking at it as a witch's perspective, Puritans are in a new world where the wild is feared, the land is not their ally, and they have nothing but blue sky and forest before them. And what lies behind the trees? What lies behind the woods? What could possibly go wrong? So the witch is the Puritan's nightmare.
Yeah.
And so that's, if you watch the actual movie they just did, The Witch, that's
I have seen
yeah,
that.
that's the New England a New England folktale is the other name it had. It's the puritanical nightmare of everything that would happen, and it's all that pieces of folklore. But still, these are things that have been taken that we do know are happening. People were whispering oracles from, the mouths of goats. People were having trance experiences, having flying experiences.
Well, I think there was one person
Not in
who
Salem.
actually, no,
Yeah.
there was actually one person who during the beginning of the witch trials, like did a witch cake or something.
Right. So the story behind this is, there's a wife and she basically goes to Tituba. The way I've heard this, there's so many variations. We have to remember this is folklore.
Right, this
Folklore
is folklore.
isn't really history, and it's storytelling. The story that was passed on to me is, there's a wife, she's jealous, and so Tituba needs to do something for her to either take out what's blocking her path. So this could be an illness. This could be, her husband wasn't giving her enough attention, so she wants to get his attention. So she makes essentially a pea cake, where you take urine and you make it into a cake. And you feed that to a dog, and then the idea being that the dog would then lead you to that person or that object of what's going to find you. And this is fascinating because this is something we're seeing in England with English traditional witchcraft, where you would give your familiar something, and that familiar or the actions of the cat within the circle would then point out whatever it is you're looking for, and working with the animal kingdom and that companion.
So that's interesting to me because Tituba was from Barbados.
She's from Barbados,
right?
Yeah.
So how? You think about it like, how did they go from England to Barbados to the New World?
Well, here's the interesting part to Tituba's story. We talked a little bit about this in the ritual, but Tituba weeds out and gives other names. And one of those names that she says that my mistress is the one who teaches me this craft, and that this mistress of hers was a white woman named Viola. We don't know who Viola is. No one's probably going to know who Viola is. But what we do know is that Tituba had a daughter whom she named Violet.
In honor of her teacher.
In honor of her teacher, who she weeds out during her confession, which is what ultimately keeps her safe. And the only record that we have of Viola is somebody who's related to the Paris family, who is the family that has owned Tituba, and we have no records of this matriarch. You know, so is this pagan? And when I mean witchcraft, I mean in Salem, witchcraft is defined as something strictly only Indo-European.
Right.
You know, and I do believe that in my own practice. You know, so was she learning Indo-European magic and then blending it with her own stuff? Because that's what craft is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a blend. You know, it's a blend, and if it works, use it. If it doesn't, don't.
Exactly.
Right.
You know.
Exactly.
So, I think it's shrouded in mystery, and I think there's a reason for that. And I think that's the gift that Tituba gave us is that mystery.
She really is.
Story.
She really is kind of the witch mother of America.
Absolutely.
I had not realized
she is
that.
the first.
Yeah.
You know, she is the first. And you know, we're so focused now on Americans because of how the craft came to America. When we're looking at the neo-pagan movement, you know, we have the Buckland who comes over, he brings Gardnerian craft. And so a lot of what contemporary American witchcraft is based off of, or eclectic witchery, is coming out of Gardner, is coming out of Wicca. And
which is really started as British tradition.
This is British, you know, this is British Isles, and there's this huge emphasis on that. And then we also see it with people who are practicing, you know, they're the Northern Europe, you know, the Norse, and people working with those mysteries. But we don't have something that's uniquely ours. You know, America doesn't have a whole lot that's really native to America.
Right.
You know, we are drawing from all these different cultures. But as far as witches is concerned, Tituba is something that we can claim.
Yep.
Absolutely, we can claim.
Absolutely.
And we should.
I think so too. And that was the beautiful part of that ritual for me, is that we got to actually go to, there was a statue of Tituba.
Right.
And we got to a beautiful
holding a child.
baby, like a black Madonna.
Yeah.
And
that's the thing. She's the closest thing in our culture as Americans
to
that we have to a black Madonna.
Yep. And then we got to go up there and we could, you know, take a shower that we're going to use in another ritual that happens tonight. But I was sitting, you know, I was there on my knees in front of Tituba, and I was just like, "Witch Mother, I recognize you.
Witch Mother,
I recognize you."
Look at my arms.
I know.
Chills.
It's just like, and I felt that acceptance.
Right.
You know, it was just really, it was precious. It was very special.
Right.
And so I think, you know, that look into that, guys. You know, you folks who are following us in this conversation, learn about Tituba, because she's really been ignored. Yeah. And I think that's wonderful that we have people like you who are elevating her and bringing her to the fore.
You know, and I mean, to be honest, you know, Tituba's story, you know, her husband is John India, and he's the first tour guide of Salem. He's the storyteller, you know, and I'm a tour guide, you know, so I'm going to honor that. I'm going to step into that because that's the first of my ancestors. By choice of where I live. You know, these are my ancestors in the land. Much with the victims themselves. You know, the first thing I always say on my tour is, you know, the accused here in the witch trials, pretty much all of the 20, they were devout Puritans. They were not practicing witchcraft. They were probably doing folk charms and stuff. Yeah,
folk
magic. How many of us, you know, wish on a shooting star, blow out candles on a birthday cake, put up a Christmas tree? You know, we do things.
The traditions.
You know, we do things with a purpose. We know that we do them. We don't know why they work. We just do them.
Right.
That's what we do, and that's magic.
Yeah, it is magic.
In one of its simplest forms, and that's how it survived, and it will survive.
So people should go visit Salem.
Please come visit Salem. Please come visit Salem. Get in touch with your roots, your history. If you're an American witch, if not, this is a place that is sacred because it has been made such. It is one of the first to kind of catapult the New Age movement, the witchcraft movement specifically, starting, you know, with Laurie Cabot in the 70s, all throughout the 90s, and today the witches of Salem, we're still there, and we're still healing this land. We're still teaching and trying our best to promote the healing aspect of what Salem needs and to bring people together. You know, which is, I mean, humans are tribal by nature. Absolutely, so are witches. You know, so my job in Salem, not only as a tour guide, not only as a sales associate, not only as a reader, is to connect, to weave, to build community, to give foundation, to give a form to this force, to this energy, which is the spirit of witchcraft in Salem, Massachusetts.
There's basically only two places in the United States that I can think of that would be that powerful. Would be Salem,
and New Orleans.
New Orleans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So those, if you want to go on a trek or a journey, you know, or a pilgrimage, as it were. Salem, New Orleans.
Salem.
You know, those
I know
are the
a
two
lot of
places
people
you need to go.
during Samhain. A lot of people go to Salem during
Yeah.
Samhain, but I almost feel like that's become a little bit
I'll say
overdone.
this. I will say this. It is crazy during October. We have a month-long Oktoberfest, if you will, celebrating all of Halloween. And what that means a few things. So if you're a witch and you work in Salem, that means you have to kind of give up your Samhain celebrations.
Yeah.
We don't really get to do much for Samhain because we're giving so much of ourselves to the
Right.
public, because that is our main
That
hit.
is the
I mean, we
big
have
thing.
millions of not just a couple thousand. No, we have millions of people come through Salem all of October.
Wow.
You know, so it turns into Disneyland.
Yeah.
You know, it's very much that atmosphere. I think the most magical time to enter Salem is when you have time to listen to the wind in the trees, to listen to the voices in the ground, to walk through the cemetery without being undisturbed,
Right.
just to listen. Because these spirits have so many things to say and so many stories that we can't even grasp yet.
Right.
You know, and yes, there is commercialism. It's everywhere.
Right.
But you know, I mean, it's in ancient times, you know, you would go to the witch, you would give her a few coins, and she'd do a charm for you.
Right.
You know, so we,
It's the
in
exact
an
same thing.
aspect, are carrying
Yep.
on that
Very
tradition.
same
Yeah.
tradition.
Yep.
Yeah. And how many shops are there? Because you said you
So
work at
many-
a shop.
I work at 2 shops.
Okay.
Yeah, I work at Crow Haven Corner, which is the oldest in Salem, that was started by Lori Cabot. I'm a tour
Right.
guide through them, and I also work at Enchanted, which is one of the recent shops, but certainly my favorite, because of what we offer, and our education program is amazing. Check us out. Enchanted LLC, Salem, Mass, or Crow Haven Corner for our Witch Walk tour. But there is a witch shop in every corner. And these are people who are representing different traditions, different ways of doing magic. So I always say, all these shops do is they give you a different taste. They give you a different flavor of craft, because witchcraft in Salem is defined as 3 things. You know, number 1, it's a science. There's science behind what we do. But most importantly, number 2, other than it being religion, is this is an art form. It's a craft. We don't sit on this. We do it.
Right.
It's a verb. You know, so the way why it looks so different, why it's so diverse, just like no 2 artists are going to have the same brush stroke or the same
Right.
style. No 2 witches going to practice the same. This is our art form, and that's what we're doing as artists. Is we're giving a face to divinity. We're giving it form, and there's nothing spirit loves more than form.
That's true.
How many people can you take on a tour at one time?
50.
Okay, so QQ Ann just said, like, now I need to go to Salem.
So do we.
So here's the deal, okay? Putting this out there now, and we'll figure out how to make it happen. But we will plan a 3 Pagans and a Cat trip
To Salem.
to Salem. We'll all end up at the same time, and we'll call Nathan,
Hello.
and we will make sure that he's our tour guide
That's right.
Sounds
to
good.
take us through Salem.
We don't know how we'll
and-
make that happen.
Yeah, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We figure out
Nathan's
everything
like,
on the
okay.
fly
I'm
anyway.
like, let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's go. This is what I live for, guys.
And now it sounds to me like maybe you're saying, while Samhain is a great time to go, it may not be the best
time
to
go. Yep.
It's that, you know, there's so much, you know, here we're talking about a time in a New England town that is steeped in magic, steeped in mystery. It's right next to the water. Water has lots of energy.
Yep.
And the veil between the 2 worlds is at its thinnest. And every psychic in town is reading. We have the most psychics in town during Samhain. It gets crazy. And so this becomes a highway for spirits during
Right.
Samhain. If you are sensitive in any way, you need to know how to shield, you need to know how to ground, and if you don't know how to do that and you cannot do that well for long periods of time, then I would suggest waiting.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it is the most magical time of the year, and everybody needs to experience it at least once.
At least once.
At least
Okay,
once.
so also I want you two to talk about your experience with the dance last night.
Yeah.
Because
Yes. Oh my
I-
God.
A similar
I,
experience.
I
Yep.
heard Gwen's experience, and then I was talking to Nathan earlier, and he pretty much had the same experience.
It was
Yeah.
amazing.
So I'm going to duck out this way, and I'm going to let you two talk about this because I want to
Right.
listen.
okay.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So I guess you start.
Okay.
Yeah.
I did talk about this earlier on the podcast, so this is going to be a repeat for some of you who've heard it already. But last night during the dance, there was this time when Priestess Miriam said, just open your arms.
Yeah. You
and
are the crossroads.
You are the
You are the
crossroads.
Veve.
And allow Papa Legba to enter, the space,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay. So I was like, I just opened myself up to the experience. And it started where, I was just going with the rhythm of the drums
Yeah.
and just kind of following the beat. And then I would just I was still aware and I was still present, but then my body was starting to do things with something else directing it.
Yes.
And it was kept growing and growing until the point where I was really observing kind of and experiencing it. It was not scary at all.
It's almost like an out-of-body experience.
Yes, it
but
was.
You're still there. But you're like, if we're in the driver's seat right now, like we're in beta mode. We're conscious, life is good, we're in the driver's seat. When you are in any sort of trance or a deep altered state of ecstatic working, altered state of consciousness, it's almost like something else takes over in the driver's seat, and then you're in the passenger seat just simply observing, but your body is doing what the spirit who is driving your vessel is taking over. Yeah.
And it was very peaceful. I was completely comfortable with the experience, because I always used to think that would be a little scary to have, to have that kind of trance or, ecstatic dance experience. But then there was this time where I could see, I had my eyes closed, and like my arm, there was like this light going all the way down my arm into my hands, and that also became part of the dance.
Right.
What did you experience?
So I love dancing. Dancing is how I lose myself. That's how I get into my states and how I perform my workings. I'm very much an ecstatic worker. And so I'm dancing and I'm getting into it, and then I have a thought in my head of, oh, I'm tired. I should probably sit down and recuperate so I can continue this late into the night. And I couldn't stop dancing.
Same.
And then I started realizing my rhythms are so different from anything I've experienced. Like I'm picking up like a subtonic, like there's a rhythm beneath the rhythm of the drum. Like there's another rhythm on top of a rhythm on top of, so you're like experiencing different dimensions of the sounds themselves.
And your body is moving with that sound.
So I try to stop dancing and I notice I'm not dancing. Well, then I notice my steps and my movements. These are dances that are very coordinated and very simplistic in their elegance, but I have not learned these dances. I don't know these dances. And somebody actually came up to me after I was out of it and was like, do you study African dance? Do you know African dance? And I was like, no. But a lot of what I was doing was just allowing the spirits to take over and do the dance sacred to them. And then another friend came up to me and she went, I was wearing my ritual dress yesterday, and there's a spot, like an opening on the back of the dress that's right here in the back of the neck. It's right on the spine. And she said my spine was glowing with white light, and that's your entry point. That's where I feel them enter and come out. And so it's that same experience of the glowing light,
that glowing light
of spirit entering.
It was so amazing. And it really is. That's the only way you can describe it is there was another beat in the beat.
Right.
And you just move it. And I have no idea what I looked like if I was doing African rhythm type stuff. All I know is I was just following I was just letting my body do the thing.
It is the closest I think we can get to flying.
Yes.
Because it is that same feeling of freedom. And it is like, and you are looking through the eyes of deity to a degree. And so you have they are inside of you, and they're inside of us all the time. That's the thing. But when you turn your consciousness towards them and you awaken that and you allow that to enter into you, that's very freeing.
It is. It's incredibly freeing. So, and like I said, this is really the first time I've ever experienced that in any kind of ecstatic dance. And so I would really encourage you, if you have the opportunity to be in a drum circle or to be in the kind of ritual we were at last night,
dancing, chanting, drumming, anything that incorporates physicality and rhythm into your working to take you into that state of consciousness where you can feel in between worlds.
Exactly.
And you can walk between.
And it's not. It is a very freeing. It's very peaceful, and you just go with the flow, and you're not gone.
Yeah,
you're
have
still
control.
present.
You have control.
Yep.
If you want them to stop,
they'll
will.
Stop. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Always just give license to indulge in the experience because you're having it for a reason. There is no time such as this. There is no. I do believe that part of our great work, whatever that might be, is it's a state of being. It's not a state of doing. It's not a state of becoming. It's just a state of being.
Exactly.
And that is ultimate freedom, is when you can just let yourself out and just be.
Exactly. And like Nathan was saying, he just couldn't stop dancing and he kept going. And I had a very similar experience. It's like, I'm a 54-year-old woman. I should not have been able to dance that entire time because that song went on a long time.
It was hours.
I was dancing that entire time, and I was not tired. I was not out of breath. I I just could do it. And it was just amazing. It was a truly just transcendent experience.
Just to have Priestess Miriam here
Mhm.
and to have this amazing elder in our presence singing the songs that have been sacred to her, that she has been singing for as long as she's been practicing.
It was beautiful.
It's so moving.
It really
was moving.
It was incredibly moving. So I'm going to say it one more time. If you ever get the opportunity, please take it and just be open to the experience.
Yeah.
Just be open to it.
Right.
Absolutely.
All right.
Welcome
I guess
back.
that's it for us for this little segment. We've got more coming up. M Live just showed up and Detroit Free Press is here. So we'll have more chances to maybe talk to them even.
Yeah, who
Have
knows?
them
We'll
talk to us.
see.
Who knows?
But
We don't know
thank
what's
you.
going
We
on.
want to thank Nathan.
Yes.
Thank you for
spending
having
this
me
time
so
with
much.
us. And we will hopefully see you in Salem.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll make it happen. All right.
All right.
Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you
Bye.
soon. Bye-bye.
Blessed be.
Thank you so much.
That was amazing.
Oh,